we weren't prepared for this boom in the oil industry. We weren't really prepared, for this boom in the railroad industry. This has been a huge, major force in the economy, but we've got to do it right. And if we don't do it right, of course, everybody's going to pay the price down the road.
That was energy analyst Phil Flynn talking to us last week about the benefits of shipping oil by rail. And now we're taking a look at oil pipelines in this country, and the long stalemate over the Keystone pipeline. Canada is calling on the United States to move forward with construction. Within the last year or so, we saw several train derailments and explosions involving crude, 2 in Canada, including 1 in Quebec that killed 47 people, 2 others in rural areas of our country where no injuries were reported. And although those statistics show moving oil by rail is indeed quite safe, these dramatic derailments are raising some new questions about whether or not it's time to start relying more on pipelines. Is Keystone the right way to go now? Brigham McCone is the former director of the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, and Jane Klebe is executive director of Bull, Nebraska, a group working to stop the Keystone pipeline. Nice to have you both on the program. A lot to get to, as we know. Brigham, let me start with you. There are some questions about rail just because there's so much oil flowing around our country right now through and around major cities. The question with the pipeline is that there would be so much more oil flowing than there is on rail right now that could be dangerous. What do you think about that?
Good afternoon, Jenna. First of all, it's not dangerous at all. We have 2.6 million miles of pipeline in this country, transporting 2/3 of all the energy products we use. Pipelines have transported the lion's share of our energy needs for 50 years, and we do need new infrastructure. Now that we have 30 states producing natural gas and oil, our infrastructure needs to keep up. And that means investment in pipelines, but it also means more investment in rail as well.
And Jaden, that was the argument in the Wall Street Journal, that really we're at capacity in the railroads. So the Wall Street Journal wasn't advocating pipelines, but saying, are we in a space now where it is getting more dangerous simply because we're just moving so much oil in this country right now? And maybe that's why pipeline is the way to go.
Well, there is actually a third option, which is to diversify our energy source and actually rely on safer sources of energy like wind, solar, and biofuels. And so there is a third option. But on the rail versus pipeline debate, especially around Keystone XL, rail is not going to take away bringing tar sands through our country. And rail is certainly not transporting tar sands right now at the level that the Keystone XL pipeline would. And so it's a false argument for TransCanada and the other tar sands advocates to say that if it doesn't go by pipeline, it's going to go by rail, because that's just not the reality. It takes a lot more infrastructure. It takes heated rail cars because tar sands is so thick, and there's a real risk. And I will say, when families face an oil spill, whether it's by train or by pipeline, they don't care whether it was by train or by pipeline. They care that their family's now facing cleaning up a spill that could last for decades on their land.
Well, and Brigham, that is the question. Now we're hearing, according to reports, that TransCanada is looking potentially to use rail, that they're not going to be stopped by the Keystone pipeline. They need to get that oil to the refineries in the southern parts of the United States. So they're trying to figure out other ways regardless.
Well, and I think that's where the difference of opinion comes in. People are mixing up energy policy with transportation policy. The fact is that this oil is coming out of the ground. We're seeing it because we're seeing it on vessels, we're seeing it in tank cars, we're seeing it on trucks. So this fallacy that the oil isn't going to get to market simply isn't true. From a public policy perspective, therefore, it's up to us to make sure we have the most efficient and reliable transportation system in the world to get it from point A to B. Because, look, I think all of us would like to reduce our reliance on hydrocarbons and fossil fuels. That's not the debate. The debate is, though, we have a hydrocarbon-based economy, and even according to the Obama administration statistics, renewables aren't going to be able to displace hydrocarbons in the next 10, 20, 30 years. So wishing for something to be so doesn't make it true.
Go ahead, Jane.
But let's also be clear. I mean, TransCanada is a pipeline company. They're not a rail company. They're not even an oil company. And so this empty threat that if they don't get their pipeline, they're going to put it by rail and put it through our communities is just false. It's a lie. It's just how, like, they mislead landowners here in Nebraska. They're misleading the American public with yet another false talking point. The reality is, Nebraskans in particular don't want tar sands. Landowners that are watching this TV show right now have been offered $80, $70,000, $100,000 signing bonuses. They're still saying no because we don't want to carry that risk. And TransCanada and all the tar sands companies are on the record with saying if they don't get this pipeline, tar sands will slow down. You know that's true. Canada knows that's true. That's why they're spending millions and millions of dollars trying to get this pipeline approved so they can get their product to the export market. This is not about helping gas prices. This is not about making America energy secure. This is about providing a bailout for Canada, and we're not standing for it.
That's a good question, Brigham. Is it just about this one company with this one argument?
No, it's not. Look, there are dozens of companies that are utilizing the tar sands right now. The fact is we are getting 4.5 million barrels of Canadian crude each and every day. Keystone is already built. Keystone XL is 852 miles, delivering a little over 400,000 barrels. You know, Keystone has become a poster child for the anti-fossil fuel crowd. And, you know, anytime you have environmentalism as a religion and economics as a superstition, things get skewed. This should be a debate on the facts, on the merits, not on emotion. And right now, we are lessening our dependence on oil from overseas, and that's a good thing.
We do have a lot of emotion, and it's not just an environmentalist. It's landowners, it's tribal communities, it's moms like me. And we are emotional about this because it's about protecting our land and water that's been in generations' hands, that's been in the hands of farmers and ranchers for generations.
Jane, let me
and we're not
just ask
going to
you,
let a foreign corporation use eminent domain to take that away from us.
Let me just ask you a final question, Jane, since I started with Brigham. It was interesting to note as we're looking about how crude is moving, and the boom is happening regardless of whatever side of the argument anyone is on. It was interesting to note that the Wall Street Journal says that moving crude by rail in this country requires no environmental review. So that's actually what's happening right now when we have a Keystone pipeline that's being held up in order to get an environmental review to happen. So I'm just curious from an environmental perspective, someone that obviously cares a lot about your communities. I mean, what do you think about that, being that so much crude is being moved around the country by rail and there's no environmental review happening?
There's actually not a lot of environmental review around pipelines either. There is a lot of concern, and PHMSA is on the record, whether they're speaking to citizens at the Pipeline Safety Trust Conference or landowners through their newsletters. They will tell you that they don't have enough staff to monitor pipelines. And the Department of Transportation will tell you that our infrastructure is in greatly need of more oversight. And so I think that falls back into the hands of the Republicans and Democrats. They need to get together and make sure they're not just talking about the energy boom, but that they're also talking about our communities, whether it's the increased safety risks of all these workers coming into our small towns, or whether it's the increased risk of the transportation of this risky oil. We've got to put that in place before we start just saying drill, drill, drill.
Well, it is a question about infrastructure in general, and what is the right way to go if this boom is the boom that many people think it is, which could really change the dynamics of our economy quite a bit and raise some environmental questions as well. Brigham and Jane, it's great to have you both. Look forward to having you both back. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, Bruce.